Hello, everyone. My name is Tim van Tongeren. Welcome to this session about the state of customer experience. Just a quick intro from myself and Annette. I'm the global managing partner for the consulting practice here at Indegene. I'm very excited actually to have Annette Geistova with me today. Annette is one of our senior consultants in the customer experience practice, and she brings a fantastic experience to the table today in orchestrating customer experience programs for small, medium-sized, and large pharmaceutical companies. She specializes in the strategic measurement aspect of customer experiences. And if we're thinking about the next half hour, excuse me, we will talk about some really interesting new research that we conducted. This was done over the COVID period, and we try to measure the perception that HCPs have of their interactions with pharma companies. So we had a bit of a technical glitch, but we have Annette with us today, and she will walk us through that insight that is coming from our research. After that, we will discuss let's say, the practice of customer experience measurement that we have recently carried out and are still have some programs in large pharma. We will share what we typically find when we are building capabilities in this space. Just a quick word on the research itself, and specifically to the background and the sample of such. I think that will give you a clear indication of the data that you will see in subsequent slides. It's a good representation of countries. We have also made sure that core specialty areas are covered in such. Given this is the 4th year in running, we try to make sure that there is some trending possible as well. The idea of the research is to measure customer perceptions on various aspects. In 2018, our research found out that the core traits of a good customer experience are relevance, simplicity, and trustworthiness. Collectively, we have a metric that follows that. We call that the customer experience quotient, and that essentially measures to what extent pharma companies meet or exceed those expectations of trust, relevance, and simplicity. So 4,000 interactions in total is what we're gonna know more about, over 2,000 physicians. So without further ado, I will give the microphone to Annette, who will go through the findings.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Thank you, Tim. So for today's session, I pulled out 4 key findings from our report, which emphasize the importance of measuring HCP interactions. Our first key finding from the report is that we continue to see that customer experience matters and continues to drive business performance. Our second key finding from the report shows that the quality of commercial and medical content that HCPs search for and receive doesn't align with their expectations. Our third finding highlights that HCPs receive poor quality experiences across both digital and non-digital channels. Lastly, our report showed that there are currently no clear leaders in the industry that would achieve high scores across all the 3 CXQ metrics consistently. So now let's look into the data one by one. So year on year, our research continues to show that delivering excellent customer experiences makes HCPs take further action. Our data this year confirms that once again, and shows that customers who are satisfied with their interactions are more likely to save materials about the product or service for future use, are 3 times more likely to share information that they receive from others, and are likely to contact the company for a follow-up. In contrast, we also see that delivering a bad customer experience doesn't really make customers do anything. We see that customers can be forgiving when it comes to receiving a bad customer experience. However, we also see that as a result of mediocre customer experiences, most companies can't achieve key business results like reputation or product positioning. As you can see on the second graph, Although poor customer experience doesn't equate to a massive negative change in the perception, excellent customer experience, on the contrary, further enhances customer positive perceptions of pharma companies. You can see that delivering great customer experience has a significant positive change on the customer's opinion of the firm's products and therapies, their opinion of the image of the firm, their belief that the firm understands the challenges HCPs face in their job, and the customer's opinion of practical support the firm provides to people's well-being in general during the pandemic. Ultimately, we see that delivering great customer experiences helps change HCPs' behavior and improve their perception of pharma companies. Moving on to our finding number 2. In our study, HCPs have reported that the quality of content that HCPs search for and receive doesn't align with their expectations. As you can see on this graph, HCPs have scored all content types below the FAIR scoring using the CXQ scoring methodology. The top 5 most visible types of content that HCPs searched for or received were disease information, drug information, and clinical data. But even the most important types of content have received a CXQ score below FAIR, meaning that they don't perform very high across the relevance, simplicity, and trust metrics. There's a couple of key assumptions that we can take away from this, and that is that content and information HCPs have received was not targeted to their needs, and that the quality of the information was mediocre. Another assumption that we may derive is that there is no clear prioritization on the content being delivered to HCPs to ensure that the most important pieces of content are easy to understand, that they're relevant, that they're trustworthy, and ultimately can create a differentiated experience. We see that there are planning and execution challenges that companies are currently facing. Moving on to our third finding. This shows that pharma companies are not delivering quality experiences across both digital and non-digital channels. This graph on the screen showcases a couple of things. First, we can see that the industry as a whole, on average, performs poorly across both channels. There is not a company that hits the mark when it comes to channel performance. We can also see that as we move down the ranking in terms of CXQ, the score, there's a gap between the digital and non-digital interaction. This next graph also highlights a gap between preferred customer channels and channels pharma companies use to engage with HCPs. We see that customers largely prefer virtual channels such as emails, live videos, online meetings, in some cases also telephone conversations. Yet they're primarily reached out to via non-digital channels such as face-to-face meetings in the office. Again, the assumption we can derive from this is that orchestrated omni-channel marketing and consistency in channel delivery is key for CX performance. Moving on to our final finding. This shows that there are no clear leaders in the industry that would be achieving top scores across all 3 CXQ metrics, which again are relevance, simplicity, and trust. I have highlighted the top 5 companies that have scored across these 3 metrics, and we can see that neither of them score above 65, which is an average score. Novo Nordisk, Eli Lilly, and Roche are the only companies ranking consistently across the 3 different metrics. However, neither of them are achieving top scores either. This shows that there are gaps and opportunities for CX improvement for all firms, and that HCPs expect pharma organizations to deliver across all 3 elements. If we think about it from the customer's perspective, it is not enough to have relevant and trustworthy content, but content that is not easy to use or not easy to understand. So in summary, the key takeaways for pharma companies from today's presentations are: customer experience matters and continues to drive business performance. Delivering great customer experience drives positive customer sentiments about your business and makes HCPs take action. Number 2, customer engagement planning requires customer data and information for good execution. Ensure that you design relevant, easy to consume, and trustworthy content. And when prioritizing, focus your efforts on the content that your customer needs the most. Key takeaway number 3 is that omnichannel orchestration is an integral part of planning. All channels are important in the end-to-end journey, so make it easy for customers to engage by using the right channel mix. And lastly, to deliver great customer experience, focus on all 3 key customer experience traits: relevance, simplicity, and trust. Pay attention and be consistent across both digital and non-digital channels because every interaction matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Annetta. So very interesting insights. When we were both preparing for this session, I think one of the things that stood out for us is obviously how perhaps the pandemic has shifted some behavior. We also know, obviously, from other research reports out there that HCPs have changed the way they are interacting with pharma companies. I think these couple of slides and the data really shed some light not only on the changing channel mix, let's say, but also on the perceptions that healthcare professionals have throughout COVID. But if you think about what you're hearing when working with clients, and looking to also, again, at the data here, what can you say about the quality, not the quantity necessarily, of the interactions that are provided?
Yeah, so I think from the report, we saw that, many companies found out during the pandemic that they need to jump on these virtual and digital platforms, and they started to, build that capability or jump on that capability, and they had to do that very quickly. I think that, probably an assumption to make is that companies probably didn't or couldn't leverage the power of technology, data, and digital to really personalize those experience in those virtual channels, meetings, emails, or website content. We also heard that there were declining participation rates by HCPs to the digital initiative. So I think all pharma organizations were trying to jump on the bandwagon. There was a lot of activity going on at once, and HCPs just had a lot going on, and they had to prioritize where they spent their time, and they had the choice. So if the experiences weren't working for them, they simply wouldn't engage. We also saw, for example, that the relevance score was quite flat and behind on digital channels. So I also think the quality of the interaction needs to be improved and wasn't quite there during the pandemic. So I think overall we can see that there's a lot of work to be done when it comes to channel planning, but also content planning and delivery.
I want to pick up on something you said on digital, virtual versus perhaps face-to-face and events. And one of the more interesting highlights was the inconsistency, if you remember one of the charts there, between those channels. What do you really think is behind this? So perhaps don't look necessarily at the statistics, but again, by what you see by working with clients, why is this happening? Why is there inconsistency, you think?
Yes, so I think we see that, digital maturity is still a work in progress, and it's something that everyone is trying to adapt to. There's new channels to take care of, new HCP expectations. And it really to really succeed in this, you need all your teams aligned across a common objective. Typically, this means that people need to execute across omni-channel marketing in a way together, but this is not really what I see that is happening. Organizations are working at an ad hoc manner, meaning that their activities are sometimes delivered late or not really in line with the HCP needs. If you flip it to the other side and look at it from the customer's perspective, this can come across as a disorder in the experience, and when they're receiving that kind of experience, they simply disengage. So I think that the result of the lack of coordination in the end-to-end experience, is disjointed, and it has come across that way to the HCPs as well. All
right. I think we have maybe time for another question. I want to really go into the practice and some of the client work that you're doing, and thinking about customer perceptions. So that is some overlap with obviously the report. if firms decide to measure customer perceptions, which is one element, I suppose, of customer experience measurement, how should they really go about it? What did you find work really well? What are some of the options do you think are out there?
So I think ultimately there you have two options. You have an external market research and you have your internal customer perception capturing. So if I go through both, so in terms of your external research, I think, you can use a third-party market research company, or you can do it in-house as well. But you really go out to the market and you ask objectively about customers' perceptions of your channels, your content, latest interactions, and you get probably more of an objective view of that experience as a whole. And that means not one experience, but all the different little experiences the HCPs are having. Then the second approach to take is to measure perception internally, and that means across your different touch points. And we do this by embedding a voice of customer program, usually, where you're embedding different types of surveys across the different touch points that you identify as your moments that matter. This allows firms to really capture the data and insights about those specific interactions and really understand what content didn't work or worked and why. It really helps you understand your channel performance. What maybe was there an interaction that perhaps didn't go well, and why? Is there or measuring interaction satisfaction? And you can really use this to get your snippets of insights across the journey, make little improvements as you're working through, and that ultimately should add up to your overall customer experience score, your CXQ score. That potentially is reflected in your market research as well. I ultimately believe that it's best to use both approaches, because they really help you look at the insights from two different perspectives, and really helps the company keep a pulse on their CX performance and customer perceptions over time. You need to look at it holistically. You need to understand where you're moving on year on year, and how that performance is shaping based on all the different interactions that you have. But you also should be looking at your micro interactions and comparing your different customer perceptions across your brands, your markets, therapy areas, and making those improvements as you're moving along.
Great, thank you very much. It's a quick journey through the landscape of customer experience management. Thank you very much, Annette, for also showing the latest results and insights in the CXQ space. And thanks everyone for joining this session, and look forward to connect on this topic on some of the other channels surrounding the Indegene Digital Summit. Thanks everyone.